Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. It's time to go behind enemy lines. My name's Bryce Koon. Thanks so much for tuning in today. And on the phone with Inside the Rebels is Mr. David Johnson. David, appreciate you for joining us here on a fantastic Tuesday as we inch closer to what should be a fun game on Saturday.
Yeah, glad to be here, Bryce. Thanks for having me on.
So, David, obviously, we look at this Ole Miss team, and you and I were joking about our ties to that Atlanta, Georgia fandom. You faced two Georgia teams: one team that I previously covered in Georgia Tech, and one team that I worked for in Mercer. So, I've got to look at a little bit of what the Rebels have been able to do this year. But obviously, man, coming off I think a disappointing loss that you could say against Alabama. What is kind of the morale? What's the message that you feel like the team walked away with out of Tuscaloosa last Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, number one, it's still early in the season. I personally think the SEC West is as wide open as it's been in recent memory, to be honest with you. So, I don't think the damage is too far flung. But Ole Miss, let's be honest, is staring down, two of the toughest games you could start an SEC season with at Alabama, home against LSU. And things might look a lot differently this time next week if Ole Miss doesn't find a way to rebound, bounce back, and somehow figure out a way to defeat the Tigers Saturday night in Oxford.
No, and you mentioned obviously, what this Ole Miss team kind of was building some momentum, and I completely agreed with you. And obviously, selfishly was hoping Ole Miss would win this game. We might have gotten a college game day, an experience there in Oxford. We talk about Jackson Dart, obviously on our board with our fans as well, but what have you seen from the growth of Dart as a quarterback that I know a lot of fans were hoping to see year two under Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Dart has hands down been the Rebels MVP through the first four games of the season. I think he is making better decisions. He did have the pop fly pass that was intercepted over at Alabama on Saturday, but they've got to keep him healthy. That's the number one thing. He's the team's leading rusher right now, as well as the leading passer, because the ground game, the traditional ground game, has not been there so far. That's something that I think they've got to get fired up Saturday night against LSU. Jackson Dart can be all the more of an effective passer if he's got a ground game that they can go to. But, through four games, and that includes the Mercer game, really not any kind of dynamite stats to report upon. And, I see we've got Quinshon Judkins flashed up on the screen here. Look, he was a lot of people, not just Ole Miss media people's, but a lot of people's dark horse for the Heisman Trophy over the offseason. And, I mean, Quinshon is averaging about 50 yards per game. And the overall Ole Miss rushing attack is not averaging much more than that. They've got to get this guy firing on all cylinders if they're ever going to recognize that improvement you speak of about Jackson Dart. There's no doubt he's making better decisions. He's much more comfortable in the offense. The kid's gone through two quarterback battles in his 2 years he's been at Ole Miss. Jackson is the MVP at this point of the season. Fans get emotional sometime. And after the Alabama loss Saturday night, I'm seeing a lot of bench Dart, play Spencer Sanders comments, things like that. You don't want to bench Jackson Dart. The team plays hard for him around him. They just got to get the ground game going and maybe get some receivers back a little bit healthy so he's got some guys to throw the balls to.
Now, look, obviously, I know that you probably try to tell your fan base this. Alabama still has talent, even though this is obviously not a Crimson Tide team that we're used to watching. They still have talent, especially on the defensive end. And two stats I wanted to point out and kind of ask you about the red zone efficiency. Ole Miss 2 of 4 in that game, and then I've got here right next to me 3 of 14 on third downs. To you, is that more of a result of Alabama just being a staunchy, defensive effort, or is this more of Ole Miss didn't execute where they needed to?
Yeah, I'd go more with A because Alabama dominated the Ole Miss offensive line in this game. Uh, again, never could open up any real run lanes, which exposes Dart. I mentioned he's our leading rusher. It exposes him to
Mm,
these SEC caliber hits, and
mm,
you don't want to. You want to keep him healthy.
yeah.
He was sacked 5 times. And Ole Miss has had some much publicized struggles on the offensive line, and it's kind of funny because you look at it and you go, "Man, they're returning 4 of 5 guys from their 2022 offensive line." Um, you would think that would be a pretty decent unit, and yet only 3 of those 5 guys are starting. Freshman All-American offensive tackle Jaden Williams is no longer starting.
Mm,
They're starting a 6'4" guy, Victor Kearney at left tackle, and you know had been getting the job done. I think up until Saturday in Alabama. Um, I don't think any of the 5 up front got the job done Saturday at Alabama. So Ole Miss's success Saturday night. I'll get back. I'm going to hit this a lot. They've got to be balanced. I mean,
mm,
if you look, on the surface, everybody hears Lane Kiffin and they think throw the ball all over the field. He's going to throw it crazy. Lane Kiffin's offenses run the football effectively. This
mm.
one this year has yet to do it.
Yeah, and it's one thing. Obviously, you mentioned the threat of the running game coming into the season. I know a lot of people were excited to see what Judkins could do. Bentley as well. Where is he kind of fallen in the totem pole of carries? Just one carry for 3 yards. He did have 3 receptions for 41 yards against Alabama, but kind of from the outside looking in, David, this is a guy that could be part of that 1-2 punch. What's kind of been the progression of a guy like Bentley in this offense?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me Saturday to see Bentley get more carries, obviously, than he did at Alabama. He is the speed guy. Quinshawn's more of the power guy, but you got to go with the hot guy. And right
Mm,
now, Quinshawn is not the hot guy. He hasn't been, and we're a third of the way through the season. And the odds of Ole Miss being able to get a ground game going against LSU on Saturday night, I would say are slim to none. And I certainly hope they can do it, but they haven't gotten it going on the ground yet.
and obviously that does pose a challenge for an LSU team that has struggled against the run game. Obviously, KJ Jefferson this past weekend able to find some successes that as well. So the balance that you talked about, if LSU is able to sell out against one of those things, I know the Tigers and Matt House, Tigers defensive coordinator, would love to have that opportunity. David, we flip it over to the defensive side of the football, and I'm going to flash a guy up here that I'm familiar with, and I know you are as well. Jared Ivey, a guy on that edge for this Ole Miss team. This front seven, though, it held Alabama, if I'm correct here, and I'm going to pull up these stats right here in front of me, held Alabama to, not necessarily terrible numbers in that first half, but just couldn't quite finish the drill as the offense couldn't really stay on the field. Talk to me about this front seven of Ole Miss. What kind of job are they going to have to do against Jaden Daniels and company?
Yeah, I like the front seven. You've got not only Jared Ivey, you've got Cedric Johnson at another edge. You've got J.J. Peaky's Josh Harris on the inside. And honestly, you started seeing a little bit more of, the true freshman Suntarian Perkins on Saturday in Alabama. The kid is going to be a stud. I don't know where they're at right now, really and truly, in terms of letting Suntarian loose on the defensive side of the football. he had a particular mission against Alabama, and that was to spy on Jalen Milroe. Uh, Lane denies that that'll be the case this week, but you never know. And
Yeah.
but yeah, Ole Miss is kind of relatively deep up front on the front seven. Where their issues are, if I may, is in the secondary. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you can really it's really as simple as this: you lose Miles Battle to Utah, you lose Davis and Igbignosin to Ohio State, you lose Tyshim Johnson to Oregon. Those are three guys back there in your secondary, and you replace them, with all due respect, with a guy from Liberty, a guy from North Texas, a guy from Florida Atlantic, and a guy coming in from Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Zamari Walton, and Zamari Walton has played well, but you just that's kind of simple math to do right there. You lose these guys to these major programs, and you pick up guys from programs that are not major. And I think that's where they're a little bit suspect right now. I don't know that Ole Miss has really played a team that could exploit that yet, like LSU can, particularly with Malik Neighbors having to be guarded out there. But and when they went down and played Tulane, Michael Pratt didn't play in that game, so
True.
you were going up against the backup quarterback. So I expect Ole Miss's defensive test to come primarily in their secondary this weekend.
We kind of flip it as we wrap it up here, David. Once again, appreciate your time. David Johnson, Inside the Rebels writer. Overall, I mean, look, everyone knows Lane Kiffin. Everyone knows what he can bring to a team, what he can bring to an offense. Obviously, there's a lot of fanfare made about the media back and forth. But coming into this game, what kind of pressure do you think is there on Kiffin to really kind of rein this in very quickly? Obviously, a tough back-to-back with Alabama and with LSU coming to their place. What kind of pressure is on the staff to really kind of find it, like you mentioned, in what feels like a wide-open SEC West?
Yeah, a lot. I think an awful lot, because you date back to last year. When you look back at how they closed last year, and they lost 5 of their last 6 games. And all while they were doing the losing, all the rumors of Lane to Auburn was going on. And honestly, I believe he kind of lost the ropes of this Ole Miss team a little bit. And, the transfer portal, Ole Miss has made a big splash in the transfer portal. The problem with that is you've got guys that have just gotten here, and you ask yourself, are they fully invested in this program, and what direction it's going to go, and how will they handle adversity? And, there's no other way of putting it. If Ole Miss doesn't beat LSU Saturday night in Oxford, adversity is staring them squarely in the face with an 0-2 start in the SEC. And, the next 2 games aren't gimmies. They've got Arkansas and Oxford, and then they make the trip down to Auburn to meet up with Hugh Freeze. And I guarantee you, Hugh's got that game circled on his calendar. So, a lot of needless, I think, off the field distractions last week that, I'd credit to Lane Kiffin. He didn't have to get on a press conference and essentially fire Kevin Steele as the Alabama defensive coordinator. He did that last week. And, I think Steele had a lot of gratitude in his heart when he held Lane to only 10 points Saturday in Tuscaloosa. For the first time in like 40 games, Ole Miss didn't score at least 20 points. And, that's so far I haven't seen any tweets from Juice Kiffin this week or anything from Lane. So, hopefully they're buckled in on what matters, and that is their game with the LSU Tigers Saturday in Oxford. Always a weird series. You never know who's going to win these games and why it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. So I think Ole Miss fans like their chances in this game. And that's good. I'm glad they do. Yeah. It should be a interesting Saturday afternoon in Oxford.
David, once again, man, appreciate you as always coming on and talking Ole Miss as we kind of preview what the Rebels could look like. Before we get out of here, I know we got down here at the bottom, David Johnson, Inside the Rebels, but tell folks where they can find the LSU fans, where if they want to read more up on this matchup and what Ole Miss has coming in, where should they be directed to?
Yeah, just go to Inside the Rebels. We're part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and we'd be glad to have all you Tiger fans come on over and give us a shout out. Love to have you.
Awesome. You got to love the friendly banter between these two teams for sure. It's going to be a fun one there on Saturday afternoon. David, appreciate it as always, and we'll catch you next time. We'll meet up in Oxford this weekend.